Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the moment you've all been waiting for. She's got class. She's got grace. She'll put you at ease, then challenge you to face your truth. She asks the questions you think and says the things you feel. Stay locked in. This is Juliet G, and you're tuned to Supreme Radio UK. Spilling the tea. Juliet G.
Morning, morning, morning. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey. Morning, 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 people. I know you was waiting for the ding dong. Yes, yes, yes. This is the last, I think it's the last week of the school holidays. One more week to go, people. One more week, parents and carers. One more week of excitement, kiddies. And you know what? You got to get back to that routine. So it's rise and smile time. What a beautiful morning. Hey, hey, hey. Why am I clapping? Why am I clapping? I'll tell you all about it later. How are you all doing this fine, beautiful morning? Yes, welcome back to another exciting edition of Spilling the Tea to Juliet G. For the next 3 hours, all you have to do is stay tuned, and have I got an action-packed show for you. It's your host, Juliet G, where I converse with real people and get them to spill that tea. And that's a T with a double E, and talk their truth. No matter what part of the world you are tuning in from, north, south, east or west, or the surrounding country, or basically virtually anywhere in the world, you can listen to Supreme Radio UK. It's Saturday the 22nd of August, and the time in London town is 30 minutes past the hour of 8 for the clock watchers. Now, I want to big up to Mr. Gibbs for last night's sterling show. What a show, what a show, what a show. Now, if you've never listened to Mr. Gibbs before for the Back to Love show, you are missing out. Let me just tell you, he also gives extras. Yes, he sometimes goes on till 2 a.m. in the morning. 2 a.m. and the party's over. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? It's just listen to Supreme. Yes, 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 people. I know what you're thinking. Boy, can she sing? I know. I say that to myself every day. Now, I want to congratulate our very own Quincy for being nominated for this year's Power of a Man Awards ceremony. Now, he's been nominated for the Unsung Community Hero category. So, have you placed your vote? Have you voted? It's www.powerofamanawards, all one word, .co.uk. Now, if you haven't experienced the ceremony, I suggest you get on the case while there's early bird tickets going. Go and get it fast. Go and get them fast, you know. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. It's an opportunity to witness men in our community being celebrated for this amazing contribution that they do. Now, if you'd like to dress up, dressing up is your thing, definitely the place you need to be. It's on Saturday, the 22nd of November at the Corner Rooms in Holborn. No, Sunday. So, and you can get your tickets on Eventbrite. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to our guest last week, Charmaine Miller, who was on the show sharing her professional expertise about adoption and the Black family. And I just have always wanted to, or considered, like if you've always wanted to or considered extending your family, this is definitely a listen to show. Now you can listen to it once I upload it on Mixcloud and YouTube. Now go over to Mixcloud and YouTube, press the follow button, and when I upload it, you'll get first digs notification, and you'll get it in your DM. So, and you can DM her, or email her, and you can find her, Charmaine Miller, on it's underscore Charmaine Miller on Instagram. Okay, now if it's your birthday today, happy birthday to ya. Now Virgo season is coming. Virgo lights, come on, it's our time. Oh. September, Virgos, is the best time, best season. Parents were excited around this time. Virgo season. Now, like I say, gratitude is a must. Now, I'm grateful for life. Honestly, I am so grateful for life. Oh. Now, I'd like to say I'm also grateful to my family, my friends. I'm grateful to the sponsors, the supporters of my show, to you, the listeners, Supreme Management, Soul Gigs, Fine Boy Inc., Martin Winter, James Shoe Care, Bark Inside, Miss B, the therapist, SAS, you know who you are, Kevin Bennett, my big sister son, for our weekly prayers, Queen Messalina, Impactful Media, I appreciate you. Vows Everlasting, Celebrant for those premium ceremonies with a unique experience. Now, it's that time where I like to pass you on to my big sister son for our weekly prayer. So let me shut my mouth and pass you on to my big sis.
Dear Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us the opportunity to see another day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to listen in to another edition of Spilling the Tea to Juliet G. Thank you for Juliet G's guests. Thank you for Juliet G's co-host. Thank you for all the behind the scenes work that comes to put this program together. And dear Lord God, Heavenly Father, I thank you for us as listeners that listen into this fantastic program, to the guests, to their knowledge, to their experience. And I ask you to continue watch over them, to continue bless them, dear Lord God, to continue to implant the knowledge in them, and as they unselfishly share their knowledge and experience with us. So whatever has gone in the week before, dear Lord God, we know that that is behind us. Continue to watch over us and be with us, dear Lord God, as we start a new week fresh and anew. And remember to keep you in our midst, keep you in our hearts, dear Lord God, with everything we do. The things that we do that we enjoy and the things that we do that we don't enjoy, dear Lord God, let us lift them all up to you. As I lift this short prayer up, your name is to be praised, worshipped and glorified in everything we do. Amen.
Welcome back to your number one community radio station, Supreme Radio UK. If you haven't already downloaded the Supreme Radio app from your app store, what are you waiting for? Do it now. Go to your app store and just download it on your phone, and you could take us anywhere in the world. Failing that, you can go on your laptop and you can listen to us live. That's www.supremeradio, all one word, .uk. That's it. And you could take us in your pocket, and you can just put us on any of your listening devices, even your, what's this thing called? Kindle, no, not Kindle. I'm sorry. My mind has got, I'm a bit discombobulated. Don't know why, but I'm a little bit discombobulated. Maybe it's all the excitement. Also, like I said, you can listen to us live and direct on www.supremeradio.uk, and you can follow the Supreme Radio business page on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok if you are a TikToker. Yes, Supreme Radio UK. Don't miss out. Trust me, Miss Polly is always updating us and giving good information. And you know what? You can even link it to Alexa. Alexa. Because I know when you go to be, Alexa, put Supreme Radio on. Supreme Radio UK. And then she'll put you on. Yes, simple as ABC. Now, let me bring on my little brother from another mother. Hold on. Let me give him the intro he deserves. Let me bring on my little brother from another mother. Oh. Kevin Bennett. Bam, bam.
Hey, Gigi.
Hey,
How are you?
Kevin. I'm alive and well, oh. I'm alive and well, oh. Hey.
You are one of those people who jumped out of a plane and made it on your feet. You are alive and well. Welcome
Listen.
to Earth.
Hey. Do you know what, Kevin? I keep looking at the video every morning. I said, thank God, oh. I'm alive, oh. Thank God. Do you know what? The amount of times I called God when I was up there, Oh, my
man.
goodness. Do you know what? We've only got 2 minutes and I cannot. Do you know what? After we finish speaking to our guests, then I am going to offload. Yeah. So I want to say thank you to everybody that has sponsored, that has shared, that has supported the cause, and that if you still want to sponsor, please feel free. Is www.justgiving/page/Juliet, that's JULIET -GEE-3. Yes, my good Lord. What a day last week. Do you know, I never knew about weather forecast until I started preparing for this job, honestly.
The wind factor
The
ratio,
wind
yeah?
factor, the clouds, the everything. Let me just tell you, when we come back from the break, we are going to be speaking to our very special guest, Mr. Stephen Akinsanya, OBE. He is a big-time barrister. So,
Brilliant.
we'll be talking to him after the break.
Yes.
Welcome back to Spilling the Tea to Juliet G on Supreme Radio UK. If it's your first time tuning in to Spilling the Tea, welcome, and I hope you'll make this your Saturday morning fix. Now, my special guest is a man whose journey has taken him from his early humble beginnings through education and the study of law to becoming a respected barrister and an OBER. But as you know, on Spilling the Tea, I always like to find out about the person behind the profession. So today, we're going right back to the beginning. This young man grew up, he's going to be telling us what he was like as a youngster, what inspired him to pursue a career in law, the challenges he faced and faces along the way, and what really took him to establish himself within the legal profession. Now, we'll be talking about the 3 R's: racism, representation, and resilience, as well as his passion for mentoring, supporting young people, and giving back to the community. Our topic of discussion is law, order, and giving back. And we are going to be fascinated, inspired. We're going to have a really good conversation. So grab your cuppa or drink of choice and please help me. Hold on. Let me get my sticks. I'm so excited. Why am I so excited? So let me bring on my guest, Stephen Akinsanya, OBE. Oh, okay. Well, let me welcome our special guest this morning, Stephen Akinsanya, OBE. Welcome, Stephen.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, I couldn't help myself. Sorry. Don't worry. I will play something before my birthday, even if it's happy birthday to me. Oh gosh, Stephen, how are you this morning? And welcome to Spilling the Tea.
Thank you so much. I am very well on a lovely sunny morning. Not quite as hot as it has been recently, but grateful for every day that I'm alive.
Amen to that. Now, Stephen, I've got a quick question. Have you ever listened to Supreme Radio?
I have to confess I haven't.
You haven't? You haven't?
No.
Sacre bleu. Hey! So, Stephen, not even the playbacks, not even the nothing?
No, I'm really sorry, but I'm glad to be here this morning.
Well, we are really glad to have you. Now, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Kevin Bennett. Kevin, over to you.
Welcome, Stephen. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you for taking up, just joining us. And mornings are not easy a lot of times, especially on a Saturday. So,
Right.
yes. So, Stephen, before we get started, just want to get to know you in a more of a deeper depth. And also as well, please only feel comfortable sharing what you would like to share. You don't want to wake up tomorrow saying I should have said that part there. But I know you've already got it locked. So thank you once again. So yeah, as I said before we get started, about you being a barrister and also the OBE as well, which is a massive congratulations and everything you've achieved. I want you to just take us back. Like, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Wow. So we have to go back. It's going to be 59 years now. That I grew up. Well, I was born in Bristol, but very quickly moved to South London with my parents. My late father was a Nigerian, and mother's from Trinidad, and we moved to a place called Thornton Heath in Croydon. And I grew up in Croydon, went to school in Croydon, and I had a very happy childhood. My parents were very, very kind and loving and supportive. But, we were, my family, my twin sister and I had two older brothers. We grew up in the 70s when, racism was sort of far more prevalent than it is today, far more in Europe. And growing up in a primary school where my twin sister and I were literally the only two black children in the class.
Wow.
And that brought a number of challenges.
Yeah.
All in all, it was a good experience because we had strong parents at home who told us what we were capable of, even though there were detractors outside the home. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So with that said, I love that you said, how you was brought up in a really good home. What are some of the happiest memories from your earlier years?
Oh, wow. So, I have fond memories of my father because even though he was a young man on his own journey and someone who was very, very entrenched in education, he used to tell us growing up that anyone who did not like education was no friend of his. So
wow, that's powerful.
yeah. So we understood his journey to come to the UK. And so, but notwithstanding his own pursuit of academic excellence,
Mm-hmm.
he always had time for me as a boy, and I have fond memories of going to the park and playing football with him, cricket. We used to go and play badminton together. I used to help him fix his car. So even though he was an academic, he was a very practical man, and I learned all of that from him.
Wow. So your father's been a massive influence over your life. How much would you say that your upbringing shaped the person you are today?
Oh, it's everything. Because of
Mm-hmm.
my mother. My mother was a powerful woman in her own right,
Yeah.
and she shaped the sort of compassion, taught me things like cooking, how to cook, taught me about hygiene, how to be clean, how to present
Yeah.
yourself, and that combined with my father, it meant that we grew up in an environment where we knew what was expected of us. There were very high standards. There was
Mm,
pride that we were expected to have about ourselves, and a self belief, not
mm-hmm,
in all the things that were going on around us. And just this thing that, yes, we were told growing up, you have to work twice as hard, but there was
mm-hmm.
no shame in hard work, and that with perseverance, you could achieve greatness.
Yes, yes, yes. Wow,
St-
wow.
Stephen, as a young boy, were you quiet, studious, mischievous, confident, outspoken, or a bit of everything?
I
Growing
was
up.
always I was always outspoken. I never liked bullies, so even at primary school, I used to stick up for the underdog, and I've always done that. I was very mischievous. I was quite naughty at school, but I think, like a lot of young black children, it wasn't because I was inherently naughty. I was bored because a lot of the things
Mm,
we were being taught, I already got my head around it, and I was looking to be stimulated in other ways, and often that
mm,
because we were being ignored or pigeonholed or labeled. And so that used to manifest itself in being disruptive, but it was
mm-hmm.
never disruptive in a nasty way. I was never aggressive or anything like that, but it was just messing around, which used to upset my dad quite a lot. but
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I always like to make everyone smile. I've always liked to see people happy. So I was always a jovial child, a funny child. And I think, well, people still say I'm quite funny, but I don't know about that.
Now, Stephen, as a young person, were you that kind of person that likes to debate or challenge people with what they were saying?
Yes, in fact, as I say, from primary school, I would stand up against bullies.
Mm.
And also, if I heard someone say something which wasn't right, even if it was a teacher, I would challenge them. And in fact, I was reminded by one of my old teachers who saw me recently, and he said, I never forgot the way you took on this teacher at school who was saying things about another student which you didn't agree with, and you stepped in for that student, and he had never forgotten that. So I guess
How old were
it's
you then?
something. I was about 14,
Oh, wow.
yeah, 14 or 15.
Hmm.
Mm.
Mm,
Yeah, and what's really powerful about that is, when you look at like those values, those family values, what
mm.
would you say, or where would you say those values came from in your environment growing up? Like, where did those um that drive to defend, like where did that all come from in that sense? I know you're saying that your father definitely was very, he stood for certain things, and your mother as well stood for certain things. Where do you think that all came from?
I think it came from just someone who's compassionate. I don't know. I was just raised in a compassionate home, and I guess it's just one of my traits. I'm not sure where it comes from. It could be a divine deposit. I don't know, but I just I just recognize that there are some people who were not able to articulate themselves perhaps as well as I could, some people who were not physically able to defend themselves as I could. I was one of the biggest kids in the class, as was my sister. We were just tall and strong. And I recognized that not everybody could look after themselves. And so they needed someone perhaps to do it for them. And that's just the way it was. And that's the way I guess I've always been.
Wow, I love that. I discovered so that my elder brother, um, he heavily inspired me when it came to certain things. Would you say, away from your father, was there any other, two or three other people that influenced you growing up?
Um, at school, there was a teacher um, who always believed in me. Funnily enough, she was the captain, or she was the manager of the football team. And I had one particular teacher who was not very nice to me and always sought to put me down, always sought to single me out as a troublemaker. And even when I expressed a desire to maybe be a lawyer, because I knew I wanted to be a lawyer around 10 or 12 years old,
Mm.
she laughed in my face. And I never forgot that. But
Wow. Mm.
Jenny Dallas, and I'm going to name her because she's now passed away, and I'm immensely grateful to her. Jenny
Yeah.
Dallas always believed in me, and I was like her little project because she wanted to see me succeed.
Oh.
Would you believe that we stayed in touch from the age of 10 years old to when she passed about 3 or 4 years ago? So she saw my career, she saw me become a young man, a father, a lawyer, and
Mm.
I stayed in touch with her all these years, and she is one of the instrumental people outside my immediate family who played an instrumental role in me believing that I could achieve greatness. And I've never forgotten her. And it was an honor to be invited by her family to read her eulogy up in Scotland.
Mm. Wow.
Steve,
Powerful.
Stephen,
Really powerful.
Stephen, what would you say? Would you, like academics seem to come naturally to you? Would you say that?
No,
Oh, it didn't?
I
Or was that
no.
something that was instilled in you? Um,
I regularly comment that my twin sister, who's a brilliant, brilliant, world-renowned scientist now,
Oh,
she
wow. Yeah.
yeah, she was just like my dad. She's a natural academic, whereas I had to work very hard. And my journey into law is proof of that because first time round when I did my O levels, I got two O levels, and partly because I didn't work hard as I should have done. I had to resit my A levels to get the grades I needed to go to university. And even when I went to bar school, I had to resit my bar exams because I missed a couple of modules by a couple of marks and had to wait a whole year. So academics has never come easy to me. I wouldn't say I'm a super bright. I'm clever, I guess, but not when I compare myself to my twin. She's my twin sister. She is what I call an academic and clever. Although my mum wouldn't like me saying that.
and you said that there was a teacher that also inspired you. Would you say also that was the catalyst as well for your inspiration?
Yeah, because this other teacher who seemed to always want to do me down and sort of um, quash my desire to be better than she would say to me. Oh, I remember careers. We used to have careers evenings, and she would tell my parents, "Oh, Stephen is so good at athletics and sport." And my dad used to be enraged because he said, "I didn't send my I didn't send my child to school to be a footballer. I sent him here to
Mm.
learn." He's old school Nigerian father, you can imagine. Uh,
Yes, yes, yes.
Jenny Dallas would say, Stephen, if he applies himself, he can achieve a lot because there is something there, and I've seen it. And that was enough of a catalyst for me to push on and to try and strive to be, the very best version of myself.
Yes, yes. At what point would you say that you knew what you wanted to be? Was that in your teenage years or was it, preteen? At what point did you lock in and say, no, this is now where I'm going. This is my new adventure?
I remember initially going to Trinidad as a young boy with my mum to see relatives. And in those days, the airline was BOAC. Some people
Mm,
might not know, ever heard of it, but BOAC used to fly to the port of Spain, Trinidad. And I remember getting on the plane and thinking, I want to be a pilot because I just love planes and I still do. I love flying. I always get excited when I'm on a
mm,
plane. Um, but then I realized one day watching an old television program called Crown Court. Some people may remember it,
Yeah, I remember.
right.
and it was a courtroom drama, and it had Don Warrington in it, who was from Rising Damp and now Death in Paradise as the inspector.
Mm,
And I remember seeing him, and he wasn't a lawyer. Um, he was playing the role of the defendant, strangely enough. um,
mm,
But I just remember seeing these lawyers in the courtroom and the wig and the gown and hearing the way they spoke and the drama
yeah,
of the jury
yes.
opening speech. And I thought, wow,
Hmm.
that's something I would love to do because it seemed like the lawyers were arguing with the judge and cross-examining witnesses and making closing speeches. And I thought, I think I could do something like that. And that's where
Yeah.
the passion was sort of ignited, as well as trips to the local library to read about famous cases, which in those days my dad was concerned about because he said, "Why is my son reading about famous cases at the Old Bailey?"
Wow. So so in relation to that, what did your father want for you? What did your father want you to do?
No, well, my father wanted me just to succeed academically. I don't think he was pushing me into anything specific. I mean, he was a scientist. My sister ended up being a scientist, but he just wanted academic excellence because he recognized that if you had a good education, um,
Mm-hmm.
world was your oyster, and you could then do what you wanted to do, whatever you wanted to do. But the baseline was having a good education.
Right. Yes. Yes. More than anything else, and that's
Yeah,
really powerful. Is make sure that that baseline is in place, and then you can kind of go wherever you need to go with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. You're right. You're right. So, but I'm thinking to myself, when I've always and I've studied so many people. It's been a part of my kind of like empirical research over the years,
Mm.
and people have their whys, and their whys really come to test them or step in at their darkest moments. So how did you navigate the hardest moments when you discovered you wanted to be a barrister? How did you manage to get through those hard moments growing up?
Um, I just think it was an inherent self belief that I set myself this goal, and I'm the kind of person when I set myself a goal, whatever it is, I will not rest until it happens. And I recognize that it might not be a smooth journey, as I often tell a lot of the young people I mentor that, I see it like a 110-meter or 400-meter hurdle race. And you start the race and you might clear the first hurdle. You might clip the second one, which will unsteady you, but you keep running. You might
Mm,
climb the third one and end up on the floor, but you still get up and you keep running and you run your own race because you might not win the race against other people, but you will win your specific race if you just keep going.
exactly, staying in your lane, right?
Exactly.
Yes, yeah, yeah. If being a barrister wasn't on your peripheral growing up, what else do you think you would have been from a profession perspective?
Oh, that's a good one. I still think, even though I wasn't brilliant at science, I would have found a way to have pursued being a pilot, or I wouldn't have minded being a professional musician because I love music.
Did you ever try to learn an instrument? As you can hear at the start of the show, Juliet's still working learning her instruments. But have you ever
I'm a
have you
work
ever
in
gone back?
progress, Kevin. I'm a work in progress.
You are. And listen, myself and our listeners are really working with you with them. um, have you ever tried to learn an instrument? Uh,
Yeah, well, Juliet knows. I mean, I'm sitting here in my office, and right next to me is a drum kit.
oh, brilliant,
Uh,
brilliant.
I love percussion. I always loved drums, and my wife bought me an electronic drum kit some years ago, and
Mm.
I was starting to learn to play the drums many years ago. And I'm not a very good drummer, but one of my sons is very good. But yeah, I love the percussion. I love drums, any form of percussion.
Right.
Yes, brilliant.
We're coming up to that all important community break, and when we come back, we'll talk some more, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Spilling the Tea to Juliet G on Supreme Radio UK, where we talk to real people and get them to spill that tea on your number one community radio station, Supreme Radio UK. Now, this morning, we are in conversation with Stephen Akinsanya, OBE, barrister, talking about his journey into law. Over to you, Kevin.
Yes, thank you. So just moving forward, so we've kind of stepped into that. You're passionate from day one, pretty much. When it came to law and what inspired you to get there, and also the way that your relationship with academia came together as well via your father, your family overall, by your father's. He was very focused and strict in that area. So let's step into your legal world just a little for a moment. Has there ever been a case or an experience that fundamentally changed the way you look at justice or the legal system?
Wow. Well, as you can imagine, over 3 decades, I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of cases. But
Mm.
I remember one particular case which had me really exercised, so much so that when the young lady was sentenced, I took the case to the Court of Appeal, because I felt a sense of real injustice. And, in a nutshell, it was a case where a young woman had come to this country legally, I should say, with legal documentation from Zimbabwe. And she got a job. She was desperate to work. She couldn't work for a period, but she ended up getting a job in a care home. Those documents that allowed her to work had been falsely obtained, so they were false documents. But she wanted to work. She didn't want to claim benefits, and she was doing the kind of job that many people indigenous to our country didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And she was obviously investigated, prosecuted, and I remember mitigating for her, saying to the judge that, look, she came here legally. She can be distinguished from other cases where those people enter the UK with false documents, with no intention perhaps of working, but coming in illegally. Yet you're going to send her to prison. And I remember being so incensed that I was addressing the judge. And I remember saying, there are work-shy people out there, if not yards away from this courtroom, walking around, not working, who don't want to do this kind of work. And you're going to send this woman to prison. And he sent her to prison. And I, to say, so incensed that I appealed the case. The Court of Appeal agreed with me. They said there was a distinction to be drawn between those who enter illegally with false documents and those who obtain false documents in order to work, and released her. And that case was a precedent case for a long, long time. And that was just one example, I guess, of a case I felt so strongly about and wanted to test the legal system, and we won.
And I love that. I love that you said test the legal system, because a lot of people out there, that when something is done, they feel like that's final. They can't fight back. They can't appeal. They can't reverse certain things. So these stories and experiences are so important for people to hear. Because a lot of times injustices are being done, and there can be appeals, and things can be reversed or turned around or rebutted. So I love that you've shared that. So thank you so much. So without breaking obviously confidentiality rules and any level, what did that experience teach you?
It taught me essentially what I'd known all the way back from being a child, that sometimes in situations where you feel like you're the underdog, but you have a point of principle that you believe in strongly, that you must fight fearlessly for it. And that's what we as barristers are trained to do, to fight fearlessly for our clients. We're not determining innocence or guilt, but we're there to fight fearlessly and for justice to prevail, whatever justice looks like, but it must prevail.
Yes, 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 yes. Brilliant.
Stephen, throughout your journey, can you briefly tell us without what the process is that you took into becoming a barrister from leaving school, you know, what
Okay.
qualifications that you needed to obtain and to where you are today? Just share your journey.
Okay. So essentially, I mean, as I say, I'm old school. So we did O levels, A levels, and in those days, you needed to get very good O levels, a decent set of A levels, and we were sort of raised that you needed to go and do a law degree, although that's not technically true anymore. But you would, in those days, you did a law degree. When you completed your law degree, you then went off to what we call bar school or the Inns of Court School of Law, which is where you do the practical side of training to be a barrister for a year. Then after that year, you do what is the equivalent of an apprenticeship, which is what we call a pupillage for 12 months, where you follow around senior barristers who effectively tutor you, mentor you. We used to call them pupil masters and pupil mistresses, but we've done away with that term and we now call them pupil supervisors. And then after 12 months of being a pupil, you're then let loose to practice on your own. And that's how, in a nutshell, your journey starts. But today there are different ways of qualifying. You don't necessarily have had to have done a law degree. You can do any type of degree. There are different avenues into becoming a barrister if you've done some other vocation which is linked to the law. And so, yeah, there are different processes now that enable you to become a barrister, but you still have to do that pupillage as part of your formal training before you are enabled to go and practice as a barrister.
Right.
From education to becoming a barrister and progressing within the legal profession, have you personally experienced racism or I know it sounds like a silly question, but I'm going to ask it: racism or discrimination, and how have you dealt with it?
Yes, of course. I mean, over the many years that I've been doing it, I have experienced racism, whether it's been mistaken for or assumed to be a defendant on trial when you arrive at court, to being treated differently by some of your colleagues. I remember one particular case, not in London, but I went off what we call off circuit, and it was quite clear to me that the barristers in this particular court were quite hostile towards me. Some of us talk about what we call the robing room experience, which is where the barristers get changed. And I remember some of the experiences in the early days going into a barrister's robing room, and obviously being one of few, if not the only black face, and people not acknowledging you, not even saying good morning, and you feeling isolated. And then in the courtroom, you can see that people are a bit cold towards you. And that even included some of the judges mispronouncing your name or being quite short with you or giving you a hard time, where even your white colleagues would say, wow, why is that judge being like that towards you? And
Wow.
I noticed the difference between the way he or she behaved towards me and the way they behaved towards you. And so you had to deal with all of that. I'd like to say,
So just in
yeah,
relation to that, did that sometimes affect your? Did you feel like it affected your cases as well? Like your evidence was being disregarded, or was there still a line when it came to that kind of discrimination and
I
what
mean,
was legally in place?
yeah, effectively, you'd be shut down. You'd want to ask certain questions. You'd be asked what the relevance of the question was, or to move on. And so, yeah, that affected your flow, if you like, in terms of how you presented your case. It knocked your confidence a bit because this person was being overtly aggressive towards you. and difficult towards you, and it then affected the way in which you conducted your case and the way you presented your case, because it was quite clear that this person was treating you differently.
Stephen, we use the statement working twice as hard. Were there times when you felt like you had to work twice as hard as your counterparts to be taken seriously or to prove that you belong in that room?
Yeah, because often, sometimes you would turn up as the black barrister, and you knew that the person you were representing sometimes would question whether you knew what you were doing. There was a sort of apprehensive approach towards you as to your ability, and that just made you have to prepare your cases twice as hard to prove that you knew what you were doing, that you were on top of the brief. And sometimes even being instructed in cases, not so much, I guess, now, but then your clerks, who are the people responsible for getting you work or selling you as the barrister for the right case.
Yeah.
And some of the solicitors would be apprehensive about instructing you. Is this the right person? Do they have the experience? Do they know what they're doing? How will the client perceive them? Types of cases, and I guess it still happens to an extent now. So yeah, you had to deal with all of that.
How would you say you respond to racism when it's subtle rather than overt? For example, like the assumptions or the unconscious bias or even being underestimated. How did you deal with it?
Well, one thing I've learned, I guess through my dad, is you confront it, but you confront it in a way which is not aggressive, because that's often how people expect you to respond. So I do it more subtly to let the person know that I'm aware of what's going on. My dad always used to say, you demonstrate or you deal with it by showing people your excellence.
Exactly.
And as I said, I think I mentioned a quote recently that he always used to remind me of before he passed away, that came from General Colin Powell in America, that, don't let the color of your skin be your problem. Let that be somebody else's problem.
Absolutely.
Yes,
That
yes,
wasn't wrong.
yes.
Now, has there been an occasion or occasions where you've had to challenge racism directly?
Oh yeah, many.
That's why I said occasions.
Yeah. It depends in what sphere. Whether it's been in my job, I've had to confront racists on different occasions, and I've confronted them. Whether it's been, socially when I've been out, in that environment, I've confronted racism. I'll tell you a quick funny story. I remember leaving Woolwich Crown Court once, and I got the traffic lights, and this man driving a car, he assumed that I'd cut him up. I hadn't, and I got to the traffic lights, and he was ranting and raving and calling me the N-word, and he was literally foaming at the mouth. I looked at him, and my dad always told me that when you deal with such people, because I remember an experience as a child when I was with him, I just started laughing, and I was laughing at it. Made him, I think, even more irate. And he just happened to be wearing an England shirt, because I think England may have been playing that day.
Yeah.
I said to him, I see you like football. I'm assuming you're going to be watching the match tonight. If so-and-so, I can't remember who the black player I was referring to back then. If so-and-so scores a goal tonight, is he also going to be a black you-know-what? Or are you going to celebrate the goal? And he looked so embarrassed because he was disarmed by my question.
Yeah, exactly.
And I said to him, have a good day. And I blew him a kiss and drove off.
Oh, wow. That threw me. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. So I mean, I've experienced
Mm.
the things over my many years. I mean, Juliet describes me as a young man. I'm not that young, but
Oh,
I've experienced all
Stephen,
sorts of
you're
things.
younger
I've
than
just
me.
learned to laugh it off.
Now, do you think the legal profession has made enough progress when it comes to racial equality and representation?
They've tried, and they are making progress. But when we look at, you know, we're very stats driven these days, and I've commented regularly, or more recently, I should say, about the lack of diversity when it comes to the judiciary. We have a lot more black barristers now than certainly when I started, and there are more and more who are qualifying. I mean, I've seen this week the number of young black barristers who've been called to the bar, which is wonderful, who are starting their
Mm.
journey. But when we look at the judiciary,
Yeah.
we are still only 1% represented in the judiciary, or just over 1%. And I'm talking
Hmm.
about black people. I'm not referring to diversity, which includes, Asian judges. Asian judges are well represented, but in terms of black judges, we are underrepresented.
Mm.
It's stayed the same since 2016. So in 10 years, there's only been a 1% increase. There are, I think, 3,497 judges. There are only 43 who declare themselves as black. And the
Wow.
problem with that is that, we run a jury system for our trials. And you
Yeah.
can imagine, as a young black person or a black person who's standing trial in various parts of the country, even London, and you don't see anybody in the courtroom who looks like you. uh,
Mm.
you might be lucky to have a couple of black people on the jury who understand the nuances of community. I'm not saying that white people can't, but there are certain things, cultural things, that people need to understand about your journey and background, which may give some explanation for your involvement in an allegation. But when no one looks like you, whether it's on the bench or the barristers or the jury, no one looks like you. You can imagine how you start to question the judicial system, the justice system. And so that's why I'm a strong advocate of not getting rid of juries, because so long as we have juries that are mixed,
Yeah.
people perceive that justice is fair. And we need to do more. To answer Juliet's question,
Hmm.
been there's been progress, but we need to do more to have more black judges. And that's not because we're not applying. The data tells us that more and more black barristers are qualifying. They meet the credentials. You've got to be at least 7 years qualified to then make an application. But there is something going wrong towards the selection process, having got through the first few rounds of the selection process, by way of exam. But something goes wrong at the end stage where they are not being appointed. And that's what me and some of my colleagues are asking the judiciary now to look into, because we cannot have another 10 years where we say, oh, progress has been made. But actually, when we drill down on the data, no.
Nothing's been done. Yeah.
Is there an independent, like you have an independent inquiry system? Is there an independent body of some sort can check
Well,
about?
the Judicial Appointment Commission have a number of programs and initiatives to recruit, and they've run a number of campaigns to recruit, and also try to look into um, why the figures have stayed the same, because they're conscious of it. If there wasn't an issue, they wouldn't run the initiatives, right?
Yeah.
So
Very true.
True.
they're very much aware of an issue. As to how much is being done to really, really redress it, I don't know, because in 10 years, I don't see why there's only been a small incremental improvement. So it seems
Mm.
to, a lot more has to be done, or we need to go back to the drawing board about how we redress it. And I know, and I've commented before, that the Canadian system has been far more proactive in trying to have a judiciary which reflects the communities from which we all come, and they
Mm.
a different way of doing it. And maybe we here in the UK need to look at different ways. I'm not precisely sure how we would do it, but we might want to put the Canadian model as a start.
The
So,
Canadian model is very similar, isn't it, to the British model, but not the same. Is it because the American model is completely different, the constitution, right? Is the
Yeah.
Canadian model similar to the British model in comparison to the Americans?
Yeah, I think it's more closely aligned to the UK. But in terms of the selection process, what they've said is, look, we recognise that there was a problem with the diversity of our judiciary, so we
Mm.
set up a commission where we had not a sort of quota system where we had to fulfil a quota, but
Right.
we because I know a lot of people go on about positive discrimination, but look, I'm not suggesting that people should not be selected on anything other than merit, but I don't want to hear that black people who apply are not good enough, because the figures tell me that there can only be two things. If there's been no increase, we know that people are applying, so that can't be that. And then you can't tell me that over a 10-year period, the reason why there's been no increase is because the black people are not good enough. I don't accept that, because I work with colleagues who are far more experienced than me, would make great judges. And I think, that there may be a need to identify people early on who are on the judicial trajectory and nurture them into the roles of becoming a judge, train them into the roles of becoming a judge. Because I just think
Right.
that's just a different way of doing it. But what people will say is that the selection process is so rigorous and so many people apply for the role, that how
Right.
do that without being accused of being, positive, making selections based on positive discrimination, which certain quarters see as being unfair, and people being selected for jobs because of the color of their skin rather than their ability. So it's quite a difficult issue to deal with. But I think, as I say, the Canadian model seems to be working, because they have an advisory board and they say, look, we want to fulfill a certain number of people from different demographics, and people
Mhm.
need to be identified for these roles.
Yes. Yeah.
right, we are
Wow.
coming up. I
Thank you.
was going to ask you the question is what changes, but you've actually answered it in the your last response. But we're actually coming up to that all-important community break. And when we come back, I will leave it to Kevin to ask the next question. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Welcome back to Spilling the Tea to Juliet G on your number one community radio station, Supreme Radio UK. We are currently in conversation with Stephen Akinsanya, OBE barrister, who is sharing his personal journey into the world of law and order. Over to you, Kevin.
Yeah. Thank you, Juliet. First and foremost, Stephen, do you see a lot of young black people stepping into the profession?
Yeah, I mean, more certainly than when I started, and I'm privy to
Yeah.
see young students who contact me at various stages of their legal journey.
Mm.
And as I say, recently we had the most recent crop of young barristers being called to the bar across the four inns of court, and that there are plenty of young black newly qualified barristers. I'm a governor bencher at the Inner Temple, and I get to see the number of young black barristers starting their legal journey, and it's great to see, because
Mm.
go back to the early 90s and there were not that many of us, and
Mm.
we had role models that we looked up to who were maybe 10 years ahead of us, whose journey started in the early 80s.
Mm.
But certainly there's been a massive increase of young black barristers, and so I'm always interested when I hear youngsters say that they don't see black barristers, or they don't think
Mm.
profession that they can enter, because I don't know if it's an issue of visibility, but
Mm.
they're certainly there.
Yeah, I think they're the same. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. So
Mm.
it depends on their focus, I guess. So for a young black person entering the profession, where they may encounter racism or discrimination. What advice would you give them about standing their ground without allowing those experiences to derail their ambition?
Yeah, I mean, I get that it's very difficult sometimes when you're at the start of the journey. You don't feel you have the gravitas, perhaps, to say anything because you're worried
Yeah,
about the wider implications of whistleblowing. But I think it's important now because there's a lot more awareness of this kind of behaviour and avenues that you can go down to report it. So the Bar Council, which represents barristers, takes this kind of thing seriously.
yes,
You're in chambers. There are contacts in chambers, your head of chambers. You can bring it to their attention, and colleagues. Because really, it's about exposing this kind of behavior and calling it out. Because unless you do that, then it will prevail. But it's a lot better than it used to be. Because obviously, when we started, we used to just keep our own counsel, or talk amongst ourselves about our experiences with no sort of formal channel to report it. And of course, our main concern was that we just wanted to be able to establish a practice and build a practice, and we didn't want anything to affect it, because it was hard enough just getting there.
yeah, and that's so true. So, is there a difference between like learning to navigate a system and feeling that you had to change who you are to fit into that system?
Yeah, well, I'd say you should never change who you are to fit into the system, because
Yeah,
the system should be made up of all types of people from all different types of backgrounds and persuasions. Uh,
yes,
but you do have to try and navigate it. You do try and have to pick your battles. I guess that's with any vocation. But
mm,
I'm increasingly becoming of the persuasion that where there is sort of overt racism, or where there are clearly experiences that impact you, then you should speak up, because I'm all about the journey, not just your being your own, but for those who follow you. So unless you speak up, how are things going to change?
exactly. Yes, yes. Thank you.
Let's talk about successes, recognition, your OBE. You've achieved a great deal of professionalism, but
Mhm.
when you received the news that you were going to be awarded an OBE, what was your immediate reaction, Stephen?
Well, let me just quickly give you the background to it. So
Okay.
I'm sitting in court, and my wife rings me, and or she messages me, which is not uncommon, but she just says, "Are you all right?" And I thought, why wouldn't I be all right? Yeah, I'm fine.
Mm.
Mm,
Uh, there's a letter here from the Home Office or the Cabinet Office. And
yeah.
oh, that's interesting. And my first thought was, oh, since when did my tax affairs become a concern of the Cabinet Office? Then I said to her, look, I'm quite busy in court. I'll open the letter later. It can't be that important. And she said, oh, there's a slight problem with that. And I said, oh, what's the problem? She said, oh, I've actually opened the letter. I said, oh, so you're opening my mail now?
Isn't that
So
against
then,
the law?
yeah. So then she says, oh, I said, well, read it. What does it say? She said, oh, it says something here about the Prime Minister's um, on recommendation to the King about something about an MBE. I said, oh, that's all rather interesting.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'll read it when I get home. So I get home and I open up this letter, and then it says, on recommendation, the Prime Minister's been asked to report to the King that you should be awarded an OBE. And I thought, oh my gosh, an OBE.
Wow, wow, wow.
Wow. So I was like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And then it says something about for your contribution to the prevention of youth crime and knife violence. And I thought, wow, what an honor. But then my immediate thought was of my late dad,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
he was one of the first Black emeritus professors in the UK, and he did some amazing work in the field of microbiology and life sciences. And he always thought, and people always used to say to him, "Oh, you should be recognised for your work." And I remember every Christmas, every New Year's, and every June when, or whenever the Queen's birthday was, the Queen's birthday honours list, he would look for his name, and it was never there. And so for
Oh,
his name,
yeah.
now to get this award, I just thought of him, and I said, "This is for you. It's as much yours as it is for me, because without you, there's no me."
Exactly.
So yeah, it was a real honor. And I remember being on a train when it was formally announced. I was coming back from a jazz concert with my friend, and the train was packed. And someone phoned me and said, "Oh, can I announce it now?" Because someone had found out. And I
Hmm.
said, "What do you mean?" He said, "It's in the papers. It's in the papers. It's coming out tomorrow. I've seen your name." And I must confess, I teared up. And luckily,
Yeah.
one of my friends who's known me since I was 15 years old, and strangely, he was a guy who I used to protect at school because he was bullied. And we've stayed friends for over 40 years. And, he was there with me when I got the news, and the formal news, and I was in tears on the train.
Mm.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did
Wow.
receiving that recognition make you reflect on, I know you've kind of like touched on it, on
Mm.
just how far you've come from the young Stephen, who you've spoken about earlier?
Yeah. I mean, these things go through your head of, the young boy whose teacher said he wouldn't amount to much and that he belonged in an athletics field. And he was described as being
Mm.
disruptive and a troublemaker at school. And everything that happened in between, what I don't like to call failures, but the postponed successes of my O levels and my A levels, and then you know going to night school to resit my A levels, and then working for the civil service before I went to university, and all the whole journey. And to think, here I am now receiving a King's Honours Award, and a high award. I think there are only 200 of them given out a year. And for someone to have recognized my work and to nominate me, and then to actually be awarded all of those
Yeah.
go through your head, and I think, wow, what a dream.
Mm.
And it's not finished yet. There's
Still
still
more
a
to
lot that I
come.
do.
There's still
Yeah,
plenty
there's
more
still
to
more to
come.
come. And with that said, mentoring and giving back is, something that you do. It's your thing. It's been who you are. It's been ingrained inside of you. Growing up. Um, so why is giving back so important to you? Like, why is it? Why is it a massive part of who Stephen is?
I think it's because I remember those who believed in me, those who extended the arm of friendship, and I think about people I'm going to name, the late Chris Deve, Alpha
Mm.
Lecointe, my cousin, um, people who, Tom Nicholson Pratt, who was this guy at school with me in the sixth form, who I first saw in court, and followed him, and people who invested in me and believed in me, and me recognizing, I guess, my own mortality. And I know that all sounds a bit grim, but I've always been sort of obsessed with that since I was about 15, that
Yeah,
we're not here very long in the grand scheme of life. We are just, we're
yeah, they're
here.
just passing through.
Yeah, we're just passing through. And so everything,
Mm.
I'm a firm believer that everything that we should do should be in preparation for those who come behind, because
Yeah,
our time on the stage is limited. We occupy the stage for a short period of time. So I've always believed in paying it forward and mentoring and empowering. I love to see people who don't believe in themselves or don't believe things are possible, to then have someone say, you know what, it is possible, you can do it, and I'm going to walk this journey with you or support you.
Amen
And
to
that's why
that.
it's so important to me.
Amen to that.
yeah,
I hear that.
yeah. Go ahead, Juliet. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about some of the mentoring and community work that you're involved in today?
Yeah, so I the very first the very first person I mentored was a young lad from Peckham who said he wanted to be a footballer. And I said to him, well, that's great, but you need to have a backup plan if it all goes wrong or you don't make the top tier. And he ended up doing a law degree, funnily enough. And working in the criminal justice system, and then he switched from that and went on to be a company secretary in the city. And he's now 40 years old with children of his own. And that demonstrated to me the power of mentorship. So over the years, I've continued mentoring, even from when I was a Sunday school teacher at a church in Croydon. And many of those young people are now adults. And I know I've played a small part in their development. And then I developed a program called Life in Focus and Life of Focus, which was a sort of social enterprise program. And it was just friends really initially saying, look, I know a young person who needs some mentoring. Would you be willing to speak with them and spend time with them? And I've just done that consistently for nearly 30 years. And I've widened it now to the Life of Focus program, where I sort of educate and inform and inspire young people about the possibilities of entering the legal profession, getting them to meet members of the judiciary and introducing them to the profession through various events. And then obviously the wider thing of educating youngsters about wrong choices and what happens when you make those wrong choices and you end up in the court system, joint enterprise, county lines, all of these things which afflict many young people from deprived backgrounds and areas. I try and say, look, you don't want to get involved in this criminal justice system because it will rob you of all that is available to you, the options that you have, the alternatives you have. So yeah, that's what it's all about for me.
Stephen, who are you particularly passionate about helping?
Young people. I don't care where they're from, but of course I have a passion for those who look like me because of the journey that I've been on, and recognizing through my work that some people have not been fortunate enough to have the kind of parents that I've had, the support I've had, the background that I've had in terms of the value of education. And so whilst I want to see all young people succeed, I particularly want to see young Black boys succeed, because I know from my own journey, the label that people put on you about what you're capable of in terms of your academic ability, the label of being a troublemaker and a rabble-rouser and a disruptor is wrong. And sometimes when those labels are put on you, they stick on you. You believe that's who you are. You believe
exactly.
And you fulfill that identity. And I just am desperate to stop it.
So what are some of the things that you try to teach young people that go beyond education and qualification?
Self-worth, self-belief, the power of being resilient, the power of being determined, being passionate, finding your gift, nurturing that gift, the power of social capital, meeting people who believe in you and are ready to walk that journey with you, seeing opportunities, and as I say, being resilient and being determined. These are all the credentials that you need to succeed. But it all starts with, how do you see yourself?
Exactly.
My late dad always used to say, and he was one for the most amazing sayings which have stayed with me for all these years. Sometimes he would quote them in Yoruba, which I would struggle to understand because I don't speak Yoruba fluently. But he would say things like, if you do not say I am, no one will say thou art.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Powerful.
things like that just used to tell us as children, that you have to believe in yourself, because if you don't have that self-belief, how will anyone else believe
It's
in you?
100% true.
Yeah. And that's a massive thing, identity crisis, especially within, the Black community. And so with that said, like when you meet a young Black boy or a person, who perhaps, they may not believe in the fact that they could ever be, because they've just been told their whole life they would never amount to anything. Especially, in the world of law. And that's why I think a lot of young that children, they kind of run towards the music industry because they feel like that's the only thing that's kind of, available and tangible to them. What advice would you give them, in order for them to even open their peripheral to the possibility of, for example, law or, some other profession that they just never thought they could even qualify or even identify themselves as?
So there's two things there. First of all, whenever I encounter a young person, one of the first things I ask them is, do you like to dream? And they always look at me in a puzzled way, because I said, everybody likes to dream. And I said, take yourself back to being a very young person. What did you dream of? And some people will say, I dreamt of being an astronaut, I dreamt of being a pilot, I dreamt of being a doctor. And then I would say to them, what's making that dream impossible to you now? Why do you think it's to being the stuff that everybody knows that we're good at? And let's be honest, we have been blessed as a people to be very good at athletics, very good at sport. That almost comes naturally. Even me, who's not an athlete, I knew I could run faster than most people. I knew that when I was on a football field, I could dribble past most people. We just have that innate blessing, but that's not all we're limited to. Then I would say to them, how well do you know your history? And you're growing up in a time where I'm the young boy who wanted to be a lawyer. And in order for me to find out about it, I had to go with my 2 feet and walk to the library and look for books. You can do it on the internet. And I said, I challenge you to look up and know your own history. And by that, I mean our history. And
Yes, yes.
from a legal perspective, I'll say, look up a guy called Christian Cole. And they'll look at me puzzled. And I say, you look him up on the internet and you'll see that Christian Cole came from Sierra Leone. He went to Oxford University in 1878. He was there with Oscar Wilde. He trained to be a barrister. He used to go to the Court of Assizes in those times, and he's known to have quoted Shakespeare. And even though he died at 34 from tuberculosis, he practiced in this country as a barrister. There are many people who have walked the journey that you think is impossible, but you don't know. But if you knew that, you'd be inspired, as I've been inspired, to know that there was someone who was there before me, someone who had a far more difficult journey than I've had, but they did it.
Yes, you're spot on. You're spot on. There's another question I'd like to ask you, but I'm going to ask you that after the break. So before I ask you that question, I love the fact that who do you have to turn to legally? So you spoke about him particularly, in order for you to kind of stay inspired, because you've had to, especially being one of the first at the time, you've had to turn to some form of book or individual that may not have existed at that time. Who did you have to turn to kind of like keep your drive going, especially in the legal world, or just even keeping your identity away from family?
No, I mean, as I say, we were fortunate in the early 90s when we started. There were a group of barristers already in practice who consistently made themselves available every Friday in a wine bar in Chancery Lane. And they would gather all the young black barristers, and it would be a meeting place for us to share our experiences. They would hold workshops for us to do training to improve our skills. And I'm indebted to them because they gave their time so that we could be better.
So it's about finding your tribe.
Finding
a tribe.
finding a tribe. Absolutely.
Yes. Brilliant.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Right, we're actually coming up to that all-important community break. When we come back, I've got a really important question to ask you, Stephen.
Okay.